people have to feel safe. You're not going to ride the light rail. You're not going to ride a bus if you don't feel safe.
Welcome to On the Record here on Queen City News Plus. I'm Chief Political Correspondent Andy Weber. In about a week, voters in Mecklenburg County will be asked to approve a 1 cent per every dollar sales tax increase. The money from that increase will go towards improved rail, microtransit, buses, as well as roads throughout the county. However, opponents have said that this plan won't actually accomplish all it promises to do. So we spoke with both sides of the conversation. We'll start with the team Yes for Meck. Tanya Jamison is one of the folks pushing for this increase. The Yes for Meck campaign. What are we saying yes to with this vote?
We're saying yes to opportunity. We're saying yes to a transit system that people actually move in and they're not just sitting in traffic the entire time. So we're saying yes to a better future for Charlotte.
Now, it's far-reaching. It's roads, it's rail, it's buses, and microtransit. Explain to us, what should folks expect if this were to pass? What will improve? I guess let's start with what comes first if this were to be approved.
Well, if this were to be approved, actually the very first thing that would improve would be the better bus system that's going to be under CATS and whatever the new name CATS will be. But the better bus system is going to have increased bus frequency routes in the highest utilized routes. So they'll go more 15-minute routes. Right now, we only have one that is a 15-minute route. Everything else ranges from like 30 to 45 minutes in their routes. And so if the transportation referendum passes, then all of the routes will be basically at maximum of 30 minutes frequency for those routes. And then also we'll have microtransit here, which a lot of people are excited about with microtransit. So microtransit is the CATS version of rideshare, of like a Uber or Lyft. But it won't just necessarily take you like anywhere. It will take you within a zone. So we'll have microtransit zones throughout the entire county. Right now, we have microtransit in the North Lake area up in the northern Mecklenburg part of the county, but it'll be in areas that are currently not serviced by CATS. Maybe they had a lower ridership, or maybe the roads are too small and too narrow for a CATS bus to fit. And so you'll stay within your zone, and your zone will have a grocery store, it'll have some type of medical facility, the essentials that everybody, people need and individuals need. But if you need to go outside of your zone, then it will drop you off at a CATS mass transit stop, and you can get around with that too. And the other big thing about it is that it's only going to cost $220. If you're a senior, then it'll be $110. And then if you're a CMS student, they'll also be able to apply and also get that discounted rate. And the transfers are free. So let's say they drop you off at a light rail station or they drop you off at a bus stop, then you can get a transfer pass and continue on your journey for that same $2.20 that you paid initially to get onto microtransit.
Let's stay with microtransit. Some critics have raised concerns that it can be an expensive service to fund because it is point to point. It's a small car, it requires a driver and fewer passengers. They've also made some examples where other cities have had to draw back or reduce their services after releasing or starting a microtransit service. So what safeguards would be in place to make sure that it's expanded but also lasts beyond a few years for those who are using the system?
Yeah, well, the biggest safeguard is that we're not trying to replace the buses with microtransit. It's a complementary, it's a supplement to our bus system. So that's the biggest safeguard, is that we're not completely undoing the bus system to get people around. And so that'll be a huge safeguard. And then from there, we'll just be basically monitoring and seeing how our ridership's going and then figuring out what tweaks are going to be needed.
Is that $220 price here to stay, you think?
For the entire rest of our lives? I mean, is bread still a nickel?
Fair.
Okay.
Right. Eventually, it'll have to go up, right?
I mean, yeah, the cost of living eventually goes up. So, yeah.
That being said, so with, there's a 40% road, 20% microtransit, and buses, 40% for rail under the current Yes for Meck plan. How much money can we see being made off this or being generated from the tax if
Well,
it were to pass?
it's supposed to be generate $19 billion to invest in this region over 30 years. And so you were asking what's first. So the next thing after the better bus system gets online, they'll also be working on the commuter rail coming from North Mecklenburg into the uptown area. And so, as you know, the commuter rail has to be 50% complete before they can begin any of the other rail projects like the Silver Line. So,
How obviously it's a multi-year plan.
yeah.
How do we make sure that, it's adaptable to how things change? The city is obviously, the belief is it will keep growing. Are there ways to make sure that it adjusts to different growth in different areas so it does meet what people actually need
Yeah.
10 years, 20 years
Yeah,
from now?
that's why we have the Metropolitan Public Transit Authorities. So they'll be monitoring that, and they'll be looking at the needs throughout the region. So it's not just Charlotte that's growing. I mean, one of the reasons this is a countywide plan is because the entire county is growing, and so the towns will get pots of money as well to fund their road projects that they need too. And they will have representatives on the MPTA as well. And so there'll be constant conversations and looking at through CATS, and then looking at what these individual towns need and what the city of Charlotte needs to ensure that we are making sure that the investments into our transportation system are the right investments that we need.
Public safety has become a political flashpoint recently, especially after the murder of Irina Zarutska. It definitely has become a major conversation here in Charlotte and, of course, in Mecklenburg County. All that being said, let's say you're someone who rides the system or hasn't ridden the system yet, and they still have this vote before them, and they're worried about their safety. Why should they vote for it if they have a concern that right now the system isn't safe for some passengers?
Well, first, let's separate safety from security. So, safety, the transit system is safe, as in you're not having buses crashing, we're not having trains going off the track. So, the transit system is safe. Now, when it comes to security, we already have a private security firm that handles CATS, and then they are staffing up and beefing up. And while they're staffing up, we have CMPD is going to be supplementing with off-duty police officers as well to provide more of a security presence until they can get fully staffed. In addition to that, they'll be using UTVs, and they'll be using bikes. And so we'll see much more security at CATS stops. And another thing that CATS is already seeing, because we've been talking so much about security and so much about fare evasion, one of the things that CATS is already seeing is that they've seen a 10% increase in the number of people who actually activate their fares. So as you know, you go and you can buy a CATS pass and you can buy your tickets online, but a lot of people weren't even activating the tickets because they didn't think anybody was ever checking.
They often aren't.
Right. Yeah. So people aren't checking, but now they're seeing that people are actually activating their tickets. And so the message is getting out there that CATS is cracking down and that they were going to have a stronger security presence as well out there.
So the plan is to obviously grow the rail system eventually, Red Line, Silver Line as well. That means more trains, more passengers, more infrastructure. Will this help them pay for the security as well that goes along with those additional cars, additional systems?
Yes. So part of this will be ensuring that it's also that funds are going to be going into security too. Yeah, that's a big focus. People have to feel safe. You're not going to ride the light rail. You're not going to ride a bus if you don't feel safe. A lot of people in our community, 61% or so of CATS riders do not own a car or do not have an operating car or do not have a license. So more than half of the people who are using CATS don't have a car or they don't have a license. A study just came out, I think it was from UNCC, saying like 3% of the people here in Charlotte do not own a car. So we have to have a way, because we don't have a way for them to get around without a car. We are locking them into poverty, into these communities that they're in that don't have access to jobs and opportunities.
What would happen if this were not to pass? What would that mean for the city and for the area if you weren't to have this infusion into roads and public transit?
We'll still continue to see the influx of people that we have here, and we'll still be basically stuck with the amount of money that we have and the queue of projects that are already existing, trying to build those out. And so, we know how long this takes for these projects to come online. And so we're just locking people into not having access to opportunity. One of the things that we talk about a lot, Leading on Opportunity shared when they spoke at the Board of County Commissioners, is that research shows that if a child grows up in a household where adults have a commute time of 15 minutes or less, that child's likely earnings will increase by 7% by the time they become an adult. And so transportation and access to good transit is one of the biggest predictors of economic mobility. And so if we do not pass this, we are locking people out of opportunities to have economic mobility. And we talk so much about economic mobility after the study showed that we were last in economic mobility. And the Leading on Opportunity Task Force report said one of those reasons is we have to address our transportation system. And so they worked around with rerouting the way that our buses were going. But that is just it's an important step, but it's a small step. This is a big step. This is an opportunity to change how this region grows and give more people opportunities.
I've covered a few sales tax increases in different parts of the country, and often critics will say if it's a long-term project that prices always go up, cost of living always goes up, and therefore maybe a 1 cent sales tax can't cover the entire expense of this. That being said, can voters expect that might happen, that folks might come back and say, hey, we need to raise it 1 more cent within a few years from now? Or is this enough money to last the rest of the project?
One of the things that's been really beneficial about this project, or encouraging about this project, is that the architects and designers of this were conservative in their estimates about what they could do with this $19 billion if it comes online. So I'm not guaranteeing anything, but they took a conservative approach to the projects that they were putting forward. And
there's a buffer in there.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess, we've been talking about this a lot the past few months. You're close to the campaign. You know what's before voters. What's being missed, do you think, the most about why this could help Charlotte and the entire Mecklenburg area?
I really think jobs is being missed the most. Just the chance to connect more people to jobs. We've heard so much of the criticism about what this plan is not and what it's not going to do, but we're not really talking about the fact that right now we have locked people out of a chance to grow and thrive and have access to workforce development programs that are out there, to have access to
parts of town
jobs.
They can't access.
They can't because they don't have a car. And also, we're not necessarily talking as much too about the jobs that are going to come when this actually does pass, just from the projects of putting this all together, building out this infrastructure. So right now, the city of Charlotte is doing has a consultant doing a study looking at what are the jobs that we're going to need to fill, and then what are the skills that we currently have, and where are the gaps? And so there's so many conversations that are going on throughout the county about this opportunity and how do we make sure that we are ready once this does pass in November.
Welcome back. We'll now get into our conversation with Robert Dawkins, who's with the progressive group Action NC. He says his tax increase and the transit plan itself won't actually serve to help the lowest income areas in Charlotte and Mecklenburg County. So first, what did you make of this proposal when it was initially rolled out to raise the sales tax to support transit funding or road funding in this case?
Right. So we started back in 2023 paying attention to it. But in January, when the city was preparing to go to its annual retreat where they set its priorities, we really started asking questions about this new push to get the legislation. And there were a lot of issues that we had, not with transportation in general, Andy, and I think that's where things are getting lost. We're progressives. We're in favor of transportation. We're in favor of microtransit. What we're not in favor of is the externalities, the unintended consequences that did not seem to be taken into account all the way from January when we started asking questions, all the way through May, June, when the Pay That passed, and henceforth since then still have not been addressed.
You read the projects that are going to be well-funded apparently by this Yes for Mech plan. They talk about expanded mass transit, better roads. These seem like positive ideas, right? You mentioned you're progressives. You want to see an investment in these types of programs. So how do you fund that without being hurtful to some groups you're worried about?
Right. So again, and we understand if you're going to use sales tax, it's going to be regressive. And if it was sales tax and we thought that there were not these unintended consequences, then we'd still have an issue, but it wouldn't mean that we wouldn't be in support. What we see is that it's a regressive tax to where low income and moderate people are not receiving a fair benefit. And we do not think that the way that this is set up, it's going to achieve what they're trying to achieve anyway. So let's look at roads, because we spend a lot of time talking transit. We don't spend a lot of time talking roads. When we're out knocking on doors, talking to people, they're looking for solutions for congestion. What the road money is going to be spent on, for one, when you look at the plan, it says to be determined 537 times in the plan. So we don't know where exactly the money's going to go. We know the scope that it can go to, but we don't know where it's going to go. But the majority of it is not congestion stuff. It's sidewalks, it's street treatments, which again, we agree with. But you're selling people on, let's not be Atlanta because of congestion. And the roads plan that they got only calls for 3 roads to be built. And the rest is for other things other than congestion. That's for the roads. As far as the transit, we're big fans of microtransit, but we understand that microtransit subsidy has a problem with scale. So the more that people like it, the more that it runs into the problem of not being scalable. So microtransit is a good solution if you're talking about people that live out in Mountain Island Lake or live out in a more less dense area to be able to be connected to the services that they need. But they're selling it for us in the inner city neighborhoods as being the solution to food deserts and all of that, which is not going to be, because even though the public's going to pay $2.20 for the ride, the fare, the subsidy comes up to about $60 per ride, because you're paying for the driver, you're paying for the gas, you're paying for the car, you're paying for all of that. So when it starts to get expensive, they're going to phase it out in the neighborhoods, inner city neighborhoods. And
are you sure? But that seems to be a pretty bold accusation.
Well, I think you can back it up by looking at places go and look at Kansas City that completely phased out its microtransit because it got too expensive to fund. You can go and look at the suburbs of Arizona that completely phased it out. You can look locally at Gastonia that started it and within 6 months had to raise the price 20% to keep it going. You can look at Bloomberg, who put together a study that will show, and it's called, I think the article's called The Problem with Microtransit. And scalability is this issue. And what always happens is in the dense areas, it has to either replace the fixed bus route, which is what they did in Gastonia, or you're going to have to raise the price substantially, which they did in Gastonia, or you're going to have to limit the service to more limited areas. And adding this tax, there's no guarantee that they will not be back at your door within a year asking for more tax increases and bonds to be able to keep this funded, because it's been pitched more to get you to do it. And what they're calling, hey, Robert, this plan is not perfect, is not just minor imperfections, it's giant flaws, it's holes in the bottom of the Titanic that they're going to continue and sink us on, whether it was the promise of the red line, which we're 30 years in, and they say, well, it wasn't our fault that Norfolk Southern backed out. It was your fault that you didn't investigate and understand that there was a possibility that they backed out before you told the taxpayers. When they say, we're sorry we weren't able to live up to the promise on independence, that was going to be a streetcar, and then it was going to be a high occupancy lane because of your government and getting us to pay our money, but you keep telling us, well, we didn't anticipate this because of. That's the externalities that they've spent no time to work out. And what it's going to do is ask poor people to pay for their own displacement.
If they were to change the funding source to let's say, a property tax or some other source, would that at least... would it get your support if it were to change the funding? Obviously, it can't happen within a week, but
So
if the funding source was changed, would that change your position on it?
So one, we want this to be something that will work, and we're favor for everything. Property tax would have to be investigated. The sales tax would have to be investigated, because we're not just talking about the mechanism of the tax. We're talking about the due diligence that went in to ensure that you're being a proper steward of the city's money and not asking poor people to pay for their own displacement. So it could still be sales tax if you could show us that you could make these changes. And they can't make these changes because they were given this permission by Raleigh. And this crowd that believes, oh, well, let's just do it and amend it, that's not going to happen. They're not going to give you this ability and then say, you know what, we were wrong and we want to give you extra. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So to protect people, let's not do this. Let's go ahead and spend a quarter-cent tax that you've already got the permission from Raleigh to do because you asked them for the ability to tax us for arts in schools, and the taxpayer said no. You still retained that ability to tax people, and it has no requirements. You can use it for whatever. Ask people if they want to spend that 0.25% on busing and to start the red line, and then figure out how you're going to do this more money spending after you've come up and investigated and came up with a plan that people will believe is functional, efficient, and able to be carried out and be accountable. And we haven't even talked about the authority that's going to be in charge of this.
With the way Raleigh works, it's not always easy to get things passed for Charlotte because of the politics. Raleigh's red, Charlotte's rather blue.
Right.
And this alone has taken a pretty massive effort to get it past city council. All that being said, if this were not to pass, there is the argument that as the city grows, roads would not be maintained properly enough or not be large enough. The transit wouldn't handle the population growth. What would you say to someone who's worried, if I don't vote for this, my city's quality of life will go down almost, within a few years or two?
Yeah, I'm telling them that if they vote for this, their city's quality of life is going to go down in a couple years or two because it did not fix the congestion. It did not get people around the city any faster than it did. It was, you remember when COVID first came out and people were taking horse pills because they were thinking maybe that would cure it? This is a horse pill that they're selling you to fix our congestion problem. Anything in there is not going to work. And before you spend $30 billion over the 30 years, make sure that the plan that you're using it is not causing you to go back and revisit this. We were thinking when this started in January that this was a local bill, that Raleigh was doing this for Charlotte. No, this was a statewide bill. And the reason that they did it that way is they're looking for a way to replicate what Charlotte is. What they're looking for in Raleigh is a way to pass off all of its transportation fees back to the cities and the counties to take care of and get that off of their plate. The moment that this passes, they will say to Gastonia, hey, you want that bypass? You fund it. They'll say to Raleigh and Durham, y'all want that inner rail going between it? You pay for it. They're going to say, Charlotte, since the majority of your roads, which mind you, this isn't going to pay for, because we're talking about Charlotte roads here, right? They're going to say, well, Charlotte, since we're starting this and gave you the permission, why don't y'all go ahead and upkeep South Tryon, North Tryon, Albemarle Road, Freedom Drive, all of the state roads, which are the majority of our roads. Why don't you go ahead and do that out of the money? This isn't a favor for Charlotte. This is a boondoggle that they're doing to pass debt on, and watch them go back and try to get rid of the Powell money that they're spending to resurface their roads also.
If this were to pass and they were to start raising the tax and get the money and begin these projects, how soon do you think we could see the negative impacts that you expect?
Right. So here's the thing that they've done, and they front-loaded this. So one, since the first things you won't be able to see until the red line is further along, is you're just going to see the busing. So it's going to take 5 years before the bill is due. In 5 years, you're going to look up, and they made all of these estimates.
But couldn't the amending then actually work if it's a 5-year window?
No, because one, you've got to go back and you've got to actually hope. You just said yourself, it's hard to get the General Assembly to do anything for you. So you think that they're going to amend a plan that they already set, that they hoped you were going to buy, that they were going to replicate, so that then they could go and tell everybody else, hey, just take it, but you can come back and keep amending it at will? No, that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is it's going to fly fine for about 4 or 5 years, and then they're going to come back and say there isn't enough money to do this because we did estimates on what it was going to cost to do this for steel, for prices based on 2024 numbers, and in 2027 it's going to cost more. The sales tax isn't keeping up, so we're going to have to ask you for more money, and we're sorry. And the General Assembly is going to say, We didn't pick the plan. Charlotte picked the plan. We just decided what we thought was the best to hold you accountable. The county's going to say, well, we only did, our function was to put it on the ballot because it's what came from the General Assembly. The city council's going to say, well, we didn't really make the plan. The Mecklenburg Transit Commission made the plan, but they don't exist anymore. That's your big problem is in 5 years when it crashes, who do you hold accountable? Because everybody's passed the buck on this just to get something passed. And the main beneficiaries out of this are the business and corporate community because they're using this as a development tool. They're using this as a tool to get workers that are now have gotten set from working home remotely to come back downtown to work. And that's why all of a sudden the city and the business community are so big on this. Notice they put up $3 million, they meaning CRBA, Charlotte Regional Business Association. They put up $3 million to sell you on this, but they didn't contribute $1 for bus stops, bus shelters, any of it. It's a boondoggle that they're putting on you, and it's crazy to see conservatives and progressive community groups battling the establishments on both sides. So normally, us at Action NC, we're a progressive group, and we're battling the Democrats on council, saying this is not good, and we're crying foul. The Republicans, that's usually anti-tax, are fighting the Republicans like Ed Driggs on council, saying, "Hey,
is this a good thing or is it a bad thing that you're with the opposite edge of the political spectrum?"
I think this time it's all about being a Mecklenburg individual versus being a Mecklenburg corporatist, and that's what we've seen now. The establishment are corporatists, and us on both sides of the fence. Grassroots, conservative, a progressive, libertarian. All of us are saying, as Charlotteans, as Mecklenburg residents, you should not be catering to the will of corporations instead of the community. And we'll go back fighting about other ideologies after we protect the residents of Mecklenburg County.
Thank you to Tanya Jamison and Robert Dawkins for joining us in studio for those conversations. A heads up for voters, Election Day is November 4th. This sales tax increase, as well as several local offices, will be on your ballot. Thanks for joining us here on The Record. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.